Hello everyone, this is Jim Pikarski. I teach the Dharma and Meditation at Blue Lotus Meditation Center in Venice, Florida. Today I'm going to talk about the conditioned mind. The Buddha said that seeing conditioned arising, one sees the Dharma. In other words, comprehending conditioning externally and internally can lead you to wisdom and nirvana. So seeing the conditioned mind can be very helpful in that regard. The conditioned mind is the source of our psychological suffering. So if we don't understand it and we can't manage it, we will suffer very much. It is responsible for all our confusion. Samsara in Buddhism is, part of it is due to delusion. And delusion is also, samsara is also the home of our false self. The conditioned mind actually is the home of our false self. So the conditioned mind consists of two parts. The conscious part is the self-talk and chatter that we hear in our minds throughout the day. This goes on from the time we get up in the morning until the time we go to bed, day after day throughout our whole life. This is the conscious part, the self-talk. The other part is unconscious conditioning. We don't know about this part until it arises in the thought stream. For instance, all of a sudden we are confronted by something and we react to it very strongly and out of proportion. It bothers us and we don't know why. This is conditioning that was hidden from us and yet has caused this reactivity, which is another hallmark of conditioning. So conditioning indicates patterns and beliefs that are habitual. Because they are habitual, they just occur automatically. For instance, we may have a belief that we are a failure or are incompetent. This belief will be activated when we try something new. We can respond to our thoughts by thinking that we will fail, or we may just respond emotionally by feeling overwhelmed by a new task or challenge. It comes from events that we've experienced and maybe things that we have been told in the past. You can get a belief in your own incompetence from having failed in the past. Perhaps we failed at a time that was very humiliating to us. Or maybe you were told by someone in your family that you can't do things right. And so it makes you freeze up when you try to accomplish something new. So all this creates the false belief that you are incompetent. The conditioned mind is also called the thought stream or the habit stream because it just seems to keep going and going and going. It's not the same as rational thought. Rational thought is purposive. We can use it for practical purposes or we can use it for creativity. However, the thought stream is more automatic, more habitual, and is not so purposeful. As we think all day long, a lot of this thinking is very repetitive and has the same themes in it. And a lot of these themes are negative, distorted, worrisome, fearful, angry, judgmental. They have all kinds of qualities that lead us to not feel very good. Thinking also has an emotional consequence. So anytime you think something negative or distorted, there's an emotional reaction. We have emotional reactions to events, like somebody dies in our life. We have emotional reaction to our own thoughts, worrying about somebody dying in our life. So either way, we're going to have an emotional reaction. We have an emotional reaction to mental events and to physical events. The reaction to mental events creates unnecessary negative feelings inside of us. These are unnecessary because we didn't really have to think this stuff. And once we get involved with this negative thinking and the negative reactions to it, it creates more negative thinking. You may go, oh God, what's wrong with me? How come I'm thinking this way? Yeah, it's really going to happen. Da, 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 da. All kinds of new thoughts come up in reaction to the negative emotions that the first thoughts created. Most people, and I think this is important to understand, is most people are not looking inward for the source of their problems. They look outward. So they blame the outer world for their unhappiness. They may blame a particular group. They may blame a particular party. They may blame a particular religion. They may blame a particular person. However, unhappiness stems from our own mind stream, our mistaken ideas and beliefs that are our own thoughts, and that we think all the time and we don't recognize how much suffering these thoughts bring to us. Because people mistake the source of their problems, they spend all their time trying to become happy by changing something on the outside, making more money, finding a mate, all this. However, there is nothing essentially wrong with our lives. The only problem is that the conditioned mind is causing all of our unhappiness. So unhappiness is due to the conditioned mind. You know, I met people who were extremely poor, yet very happy, because their minds were not distorted, and they didn't think a lot of negative thoughts. So our conditions on the outside are not responsible for our suffering. How do we change the thought stream? How do we change our conditioned mind? Well, we can change it psychologically by learning to question our thinking and making sure that our thinking is more positive and less distorted. For instance, we can question our belief that we are incompetent and see that this is not true. If we can see through this, then this problem will no longer plague us, because we simply won't believe it anymore. And you don't tend to think things that you don't believe. We can also work on it spiritually. In this approach, we learn not to pay so much attention to the thought stream as a whole, not spend so much time involved with these thoughts. And we learn to attend to something else besides the thought stream. An example of this is the practice of meditation. In this approach, we learn not to pay so much attention to the thought stream. Instead, we pay attention to our breath, the sensations in our body, and we just become aware of that. When we meditate, every time we get lost in the thought stream, we become mindful of that, and we bring ourselves back to the breath or the body. Every time we do this, we break some of the power of the conditioned mind to hypnotize us. Because that's what's really happening. It's almost like we're hypnotized by the content and the stories in our conditioned mind. And because we're so hypnotized by these, we don't notice the other world, the world of awareness and sensation, which is the primary world. Through spirituality, we learn to also attend to that which is beyond thought. So we learn to attend to sensation, silence, space, awareness. So basically there's two ways of dealing with the conditioned mind. One is psychological, which is changing the conditioned mind to believe things that are more positive and to think more positive thoughts. And the other way is a more spiritual approach, which is to see the conditioned mind as a whole and its problematic aspect, and to realize that if we attend to the conditioned mind, we are subject to it, and we're subject to all its conditioning and the resultant suffering, because it will make us unhappy. So understanding the conditioned mind is essential for happiness. And we have to really understand that this is the cause of our problems. The ego tends to blame the outside because the ego lives in the conditioned mind. So the ego doesn't want you to look at your conditioned mind. It will bring up all kinds of defenses. And sometimes in the conditioned mind, there's really difficult feelings. And sometimes we don't want to experience those feelings. So we can't really look at it because we'll become defensive or we'll distract ourselves somehow, or we'll get drunk rather than inquire into our own conditioning. So, if you would like to make some progress in your life and feel happier, notice what the conditioned mind is. Don't blame outer events. Don't blame yourself. Understand that the conditioned mind is just creating unhappiness. And the conditioned mind is just a habit pattern. It's not our fault. It's not our fault, but it's our responsibility to change it because nobody else can. And you can change your conditioned mind. You can make it more positive in a psychological way, or you can start not paying so much attention to it and realize its limitations and that it's just habit patterns of thinking. Nothing important. Thank you.